Welcome back to another episode of Sports Night in Auburn. I'm Grace DeLeon.
And I'm Ncaa Kelly. We have a lot in store for you today. Basketball, gymnastics, baseball, and much more.
Auburn men's basketball traveled to Greenville, South Carolina for the first two rounds of the Ncaa tournament. Auburn held the 2 seed in the Midwest bracket in the first round. The Tigers took on the 15th-seeded Jacksonville State Gamecocks.
The Gamecocks were able to keep the game close through the first 15 minutes, but then Auburn was able to pull away to make it a 12-point game by halftime. Through the second half, the lead grew to as much as 24 points. The game finished with a score of 80-61.
Auburn forward Jabari Smith finished tied for the game high with 20 points. Smith also added 14 rebounds to complete his double-double. Walker Kessler also had a double-double and was only 1 block away from a triple-double. Kessler had 13 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 blocks.
In the second round of the NCAA tournament, the Tigers took on the 10-seed Miami Hurricanes, who just came off a win over 7-seed Southern California. The Hurricanes came out firing on all cylinders. Miami had a 9-point lead only 5 minutes into the game and held it until Auburn caught fire and shrunk the lead to 1 by halftime.
After halftime, Miami again pulled out to a 9-point lead, but this one would be too much for the Tigers to handle. The Miami lead grew to 18 by the end of the game for the final score of 61-79.
Auburn never led the game in shooting, just over 30% from the field and under 20 from the 3 on 26 attempts. Jalen Williams and Katie Johnson led the Tigers in scoring with 12 points each. Jabari Smith had another double-double game with 10 points and 15 rebounds.
This marks the end to the basketball team's historic season, where they reached number 1 in the AP poll for the first time in program history and won the SEC regular season. This was the last game that Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler are expected to play for Auburn, with both expected to declare for the NBA draft.
With the second round of the NCAA tournament in the books, the Sweet 16 has been set. The teams include Gonzaga, Arkansas, Texas Tech, Duke, North Carolina, UCLA, Arizona, Houston, Michigan, Villanova, Kansas, Providence, Iowa State, Miami, Purdue, and Cinderella story St. Peter's. St. Peter's holds the 15 seed and advanced to the Sweet 16 after beating 2-seed Kentucky in the first round and 7-seed Murray State in the second.
The Auburn gymnastics team went to Birmingham, Alabama to compete in the SEC championships. Auburn took home 3rd place with a score of 197.225. Suni Lee earned a perfect 10 on bars to win the event. On the beam, Sophia Groth earned runner-up honors, and on the floor, Darian Gobarn and Lee shared runner-up honors.
Florida took home 1st place to win the SEC championship. Auburn will host an NCAA regional meet on March 31st and April 2nd in Neville Arena. Here's what head coach Jeff Graba said ahead of the meet.
Well, I mean, just you don't hide when Georgia comes to town. I mean, it's a little different when a team that you haven't seen before comes to town. You just don't know what you're going to get. Everybody knows what they're going to get with Georgia. They're starting to click a little bit. They're a dangerous team. You know, they're still one of the best teams in the country. So, yeah, but you know, you got to be really good this time of year. You know, this is the national tournament. You know, you don't make this tournament without earning it. So everybody's fully capable of beating anybody else on these days. We don't need to worry about the other teams. We're good enough to beat most of these other teams on any given night if we're on our game. So it's all about us being on our game.
Auburn baseball welcomed the number 1 team in the country to the Plains this past weekend. The Ole Miss Rebels took the first game of the series after both teams got a few runs on the board early. By the end of the second inning, it was tied for all. After this, the Rebel offense took over, putting up 9 more runs by the 7th inning. Auburn tried to keep up with 2 runs in the 6th inning, but could keep up the same pace and fell 6-13. Here's Eagles Eye's Ncaa Kelly on the second game of the series.
After the Tigers displayed their best offensive performance in SEC play since 2018 and tied the series against number 1 ranked Ole Miss, defeating them 19-5 Friday night, Plainsman Park was packed with a sellout crowd of 4,096 on Saturday afternoon in hopes of an upset series win. Trace Bright started the game on the mound for the Tigers, retiring 7 of the first 8 batters he faced. In 4.1 innings, Bright had 5 strikeouts and allowed only 2 walks. Opposite Bright was Ole Miss freshman Jack Dougherty, who was a key player in the win for Ole Miss, allowing 1 run with 7 strikeouts in the 5 innings he pitched. Blake Rambush extended his hitting streak to a season-best 10 games. Kason Howell contributed multiple hits for the 7th time this season, including a double. The game was scoreless on both sides until the Rebels built momentum in the top of the 3rd with 3 unearned runs as a result of 2-out walk and error in left field. Auburn answered right away in the bottom of the 3rd as Ryan Dial followed up Howell's double with an RBI single, bringing the score to 3-1. However, with 2 Tigers on base, a pair of strikeouts left the runner stranded to end the inning. Auburn put forth efforts in the 6th as designated hitter Brooks Carlson singled to left field and advanced to second after Mike Bello was ready on first base from a walk. Howell hit an RBI single, bringing home Carlson and attempting to lower the deficit, ending the scoring for Auburn. Ole Miss added 4 runs in the 5th and an additional 4 in the 6th, making the score 11-1. They took the win and ran with it, scoring a run in each of the last 3 innings. The final score of the last game was 15-2, and the Rebs head back to Oxford with a 2-1 series win over Auburn. Auburn baseball is set to travel to Riverwalk Stadium to face South Alabama on Tuesday in Montgomery at 6 p.m. Central Time. With Eagle Eye TV, this is Michaela Kelly.
The 3rd and final game of the series ended in another blowout game. This time, Auburn was on the losing side. After another slow start through 2 innings, the Ole Miss Rebels turned it on and put up 3 runs and didn't slow down after that. The game ended 15-2 in favor of Ole Miss. Ole Miss won the series 2-1.
On Tuesday, Auburn traveled to Montgomery to take on South Alabama in a neutral site game. Auburn went down 6-0 early, but railed back to win the game 13-12. The comeback was the largest by any Auburn team since February 12, 2017. When we come back, we'll talk about softball series against South Carolina and more Auburn sports. You're watching Sports Night in Auburn. Welcome back to Sports Night in Auburn.
The red-hot 18th-ranked Auburn softball team battled the South Carolina Gamecocks this past weekend at home. The first game was close throughout and eventually headed into extra innings. Tied 7-7, the Gamecocks put up 3 runs at the top of the 11th. The Tigers were unable to match South Carolina at the bottom of the inning and lost their first game in 16 games.
The second game, however, was not as close. Auburn put on a hitting clinic and scored 11 runs by the 5th inning compared to South Carolina's 2. The Tigers' run ruled the Gamecocks in 5 innings with a final score of 11-2.
The third game was another close game that would head into extra innings. Tied at 3 apiece through 9, the Tigers kept South Carolina scoreless through the last 6 innings and walked the game off in the 10th to win 4-3.
Auburn softball takes a trip up to Lexington, Kentucky for the first road series of conference play. Starting on Friday and going through Sunday, the Tigers will face the Kentucky Wildcats.
Auburn will host the SEC Championships for Equestrian on Friday and Saturday, March 25th and 6th in the Auburn University Equestrian Center.
The Women's Ncaa Swim and Dive Championships were this past week, and despite having 10 athletes qualify, Auburn did not win any medals. This week, starting Wednesday and going through Saturday, is the Men's Swim and Dive Championships.
The Auburn women's tennis team took a road trip to Mississippi this past weekend to take on Ole Miss and Mississippi State. The 8th-ranked Tigers took down both opponents. The Tigers defeated Mississippi State 5-2 on Friday and Ole Miss 4-3 on Sunday. Next up for the women's team is a home match on Friday against Arkansas. The match will take place in the Yarborough Tennis Center at 3 p.m.
The men's tennis team also went on a road trip for their 2 matches this weekend, but this time to Kentucky and Vanderbilt. Auburn lost the match against Kentucky 3-4, but was able to bounce back against Vanderbilt for a 4-1 win. The men's team will hope to continue this short win streak when they travel to Ole Miss on Friday.
Neither Auburn golf team competed this week, but the 10th-ranked men's team will travel to South Carolina on Sunday to compete in the Hootie at Bulls Bay Intercollegiate.
When we come back, we'll talk about Auburn and the NBA. You're watching Sports Night in Auburn. Welcome back to Sports Night in Auburn. Chuma Okeke and the Orlando Magic played the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Golden State Warriors over the week. The former Auburn Tiger had 8 points in both wins. Okeke also reeled in 11 rebounds against the Warriors.
Isaac Okoro played in 3 games this week for the Cleveland Cavaliers. In 2 of the games, Okoro tallied over 10 points. He had 11 against the Detroit Pistons and 12 against the LA Lakers.
For more information on Auburn athletics, be sure to check out our website at eagleeyeauburn.com and stay up to date on all things Auburn sports on our Twitter at EETV_sports. I'm Grace DeLeon.
And I'm Michaela Kelly. Thank you for watching. Good night and War Eagle.